Let's go live to the Associate Editor at the Australian, Graham Lloyd. Graham, the RBA Governor faced a couple of grillings this week. It keeps that rates issue front and centre and will be for months to come.
That's right, Kieran. Good morning. Look, as you move about the community now, you can see anecdotally that higher rates are really starting to bite. People had made plans and those plans are now more difficult to implement, and there's a mixture of sort of anger and fear about it. At this point, the government is hoping that anger is directed towards Philip Lowe, who had to explain himself this week. And he gave a message to government that, look, this is a joint enterprise and there needs to be some discipline from the government in a budget sense to stop things getting out of hand. And it really is a precarious point, because if you look at what's happening around the place, inflation has peaked, it's come down a little bit, but there's a lot of discussion about how quickly it's going to fall to where the central banks want it to be. And the evidence out of the US this week is it's going to be longer than they were hoping, and that will inevitably spill over to Australia. So there's a bit of a good cop, bad cop routine going on between the RBA and the government, but they'll need to get on the same page.
Graham, the safeguard mechanism, how would you rate the government's prospects of securing a compromise, or are we going to see history repeat itself on climate policy?
Well, very interesting, Karen. I think Adam Bant gave the game away on your program today. He said that maybe a solution would be putting a climate trigger into the revised environmental laws, something that the government is doing now. They claim that they will revise the laws and they will have an independent body that will oversee them. Something like a climate trigger has been called for by green groups and the Greens for a long period of time. It's something the government hasn't picked up to date. And if you look at the way courts are starting to interpret this issue of climate impact and whether projects should proceed, it's a very tricky situation for the coal and gas industry, and I think the impact of what's happening now will be the industry will be gearing up to push back as hard as it can.
On to border protection, a couple of issues emerging in the last week on that area, in that space. Does the government have to be vigilant on that front?
Well, it's one of those issues that's bubbling away in the background. There's a sense of deja vu, isn't there? We've got the Greens threatening to block a trading scheme, and we've got the potential of a whole load of boats with sort of asylum seekers coming because the government appears to be weakening the laws that were in place. Anthony Albanese is trying to sort of strike that balance where he says they're going to be tough but humane, and unfortunately that's a difficult space to occupy here. There's a lot of attention being applied now to gauging whether the people smuggler business is going to be revived. The Navy's on alert to watch out for attempts to come here, and that would be the last thing that the government wants as it tries to negotiate a pretty tricky position in the Senate to have to deal with what is a very fraught issue.
Graham, I'll see you next week. Thanks.